Intellectual suicide. I mean, that's not a phrase you just gloss over, right?
It is a heavy opener, yeah.
When I saw that in the title of our source text, intellectual suicide or living faith, it really stopped me. We're always talking about, sharpening your intellect, feeding it,
Mhm.
not killing it.
Right. It immediately stakes out the territory. This isn't just about being stubborn or being wrong.
Mhm.
The source is talking about a kind of cognitive death.
And since this is all based on the philosophy of Alan Watts, I sort of figured, okay, buckle up.
That's his signature move, isn't it?
Totally.
Yeah.
He takes a concept you think you get, like faith, and just turns it inside out until you realize you've been looking at it backwards.
And this text really hones in on one specific tension. It's the tension between dogma, the rules and the codes we live by,
Right.
and faith.
Right.
And the argument here is pretty radical. It basically positions them as, well, almost as opposites.
Which is so counterintuitive for a lot of people, I think. Usually faith and dogma they're practically synonyms. You have faith in the dogma. But this source suggests that clinging to the dogma is the suicide part, and that faith is something else entirely.
Precisely. The text argues that if you cling too tightly to the definitions, to the rules, you're not being principled. You are, in fact, shutting down the very mechanism of insight.
You're committing intellectual suicide.
Yeah. You've decided that the map you're holding is more real than the world you're actually walking through.
Okay, that map versus the territory idea is a classic, but this feels very high stakes. Before we get to the whole suicide part, we should probably define what the source means by dogma.
Good idea.
Because today, dogma is pretty much a dirty word. It just screams blind obedience.
True, but the text, it actually starts with the defense of dogma, or at least a validation of it. It calls dogmas shared understandings, codes that groups develop.
Okay.
It even says they're meant to be guides along the way.
That makes sense. I mean, we need shared understandings. Without them, we couldn't function. We'd spend all day arguing if a red light means stop.
Exactly. The source acknowledges that. These forms, they draw from tradition, from the wisdom of the past. They're useful. They save us from having to relearn everything from scratch, generation after generation.
You want the trail markers that people left when they climbed the mountain before you.
You absolutely do. You don't want to bushwhack up Everest just to prove a point. But here, right here, is where the pivot happens. The text says, the problem isn't the dogma itself. It's our relationship to it. It says, and this is the key, dogmas point to truth and reality. They are not the reality itself.
And that is the crucial distinction.
It's everything. To stick with your analogy, the trail marker points to the summit. It tells you which way to go. But if you get to that marker, wrap your arms around it and shout, "I've arrived! This wooden post is the summit." Well, you've fundamentally misunderstood its purpose.
And you're going to be really, really disappointed by the view.
And you're never going to experience the actual mountain. You're clinging to a symbol instead of the reality it represents. The source warns that if we're limited to mere intellectual adherence,
Just agreeing with the words on the sign.
yes, we miss the deeper reality.
It's so easy to slip into that, though. Intellectual adherence is. It's comfortable. It's much easier to memorize a code than to actually live it out in a messy, complicated world.
That's the cost. When you mistake the menu for the meal, you starve. You can memorize the description of the food. You can argue about the font on the menu. You could even start a club for people who love the menu.
But you're not eating.
You're not eating. And that leads us straight into this intellectual suicide concept. The text quotes Watts directly. He says, irrevocable commitment to dogma is intellectual suicide.
I want to push on that word. Irrevocable.
It's the key word.
Right, because normally we value commitment. We like people who stick to their guns, but Watts is saying if that commitment can't be changed, can't be questioned, you've killed your mind.
Well, think about what the intellect does. It observes, it analyzes, it adapts, it takes in new information. If you make an irrevocable commitment, if you say, this sentence is the final truth and nothing will ever change my mind, you've just stopped the entire process of learning.
You've poured concrete over your brain, essentially.
That's a good way to put it. The source explains this kind of attitude closes the mind to any new vision of the world. It builds a resistance to any deeper or renewed understanding.
Which makes sense. If you already have the final answer, why would you even look at new evidence?
Why would you? And that's a dangerous place to be because the world is constantly changing. The text makes a philosophical point here that I think is so important.
What's that?
It claims that human knowledge is never complete, that every single insight we have is, by its nature, partial.
That requires a huge slice of humility.
It does. We're finite beings. We have limited senses, limited lifespans. We're trying to comprehend a reality that is, well, it's likely infinite and unbelievably complex.
Yeah.
So logically, any statement we make about it is going to be incomplete.
It's like looking at the ocean through a keyhole. You see blue, you see water, so you say the ocean is blue water, and that's true. But if you refuse to open the door because you think you've seen the whole thing, you're just delusional.
And that delusion is the suicide. It's a denial of what the text calls the dynamic nature of truth in human growth.
Because reality moves. Life grows.
And if your ideas are fixed and frozen, they're dead things in a living world. You become disconnected from what's actually happening.
So if that's intellectual suicide, clinging to the static map, the alternative presented is living faith. And this is where my definition of faith just got turned upside down.
It really does. Like we said earlier, we tend to think faith means absolute certainty in a specific doctrine.
Right. I have faith that X is true.
But the source, drawing on Watts, defines faith as openness, an act of trust in the unknown.
Trust in the unknown. Okay, that is a massive psychological shift. It's not about trusting that you know the answer. It's trusting that you'll be okay without knowing the answer.
Exactly. It completely changes the direction of your energy.
Yeah.
Dogma, a certainty, is about grasping, holding on, controlling. Living faith is about letting go.
Wow.
The text uses this beautiful image. It says that true faith allows dogma to become a doorway.
A doorway versus a prison. I love that.
If you treat the rule as the final reality, you're locked inside it. It's a prison. You can only think thoughts that fit inside that little box. But if you treat it as a pointer, signpost, it becomes a doorway. You walk through it.
Okay, so what are you walking into?
The text says it invites us beyond formulas into encounter.
Encounter. That's such an active word. It suggests you're meeting something real, something unpredictable.
And that's why it requires trust. You can't control an encounter like you can control a formula. A formula is safe, it's on the page. An encounter with reality, whether that's spiritual or just the reality of another person, is risky. It requires the humility to acknowledge a great mystery that transcends human comprehension.
There's a trade-off here, though, that the text points to. And I think this is why it's so hard for people. It contrasts control with trust.
That's the core conflict. We crave control. I mean, our brains are wired to predict outcomes. It keeps us safe. Uncertainty feels like a threat.
So we cling to these fixed ideas.
We do. They give us the illusion of control. We think, if I just follow these rules perfectly, I know exactly what will happen.
It's a security blanket. If I have the right map, nothing bad can happen to me.
But the text argues that living faith requires us to drop that desire for control and instead embrace trust. It's being willing to swim in the water without trying to freeze it into ice just so you can walk on it.
That's a great image, trying to freeze the ocean because you're scared of swimming. It might work for a minute, but eventually the ocean's going to crack the ice.
And when we stop trying to freeze reality, when we stop forcing the world to fit our neat little definitions, the source says we gain something profound. We start to see life and the sacred with greater clarity and wonder.
Wonder. That seems to be the first casualty of certainty, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
You can't really be in awe of something if you think you've already got it completely categorized and labeled. Oh, that's just a sunset. I know the physics of that. Moving on.
Right. I have the definition, therefore I have the experience. No, you don't. You have a label. Living faith strips away the label so you can see the thing itself again.
But let's be real for a second. This is terrifying. The text frames it as this binary choice: intellectual suicide or living faith. But that first path, it feels safer, doesn't it?
It feels much safer. And the source is clear about the motivations.
Yeah.
Intellectual suicide, that closing of the mind, it's driven by a fear of uncertainty. It's a defensive crouch.
Whereas living faith is driven by courageous trust. And I like that word, courageous. It admits that keeping your mind open isn't some passive, fluffy thing.
Not at all.
It takes actual guts to say, I don't know, or you know what, my previous understanding was incomplete.
It takes immense courage. It's so much easier to be an ideologue, to be a fundamentalist, whether that's in religion or politics or even science. You get to be right. You get to be in the in-group. Stepping out of that fortress makes you vulnerable.
The text sums up the trade-off with a line that really stuck with me. It says, certainty can comfort us, but openness transforms us.
That's the bottom line right there. It's a question of what you really want. Do you want comfort? Then stick to the rigid formulas. Stay in the prison. It's warm. You know where the walls are.
But if you want transformation...
If you want to actually grow and see the world more clearly, you have to step outside.
And transformation is messy. It implies that you have to change. The person holding the map changes.
Exactly. You stop relying on the external authority of the code, and you start engaging with the living reality in front of you.
So bringing this back down to earth, this applies to everyday life, right? Not just theology.
Absolutely. Think about a company. It has its values or its processes. Those are its dogmas. They're useful guides. But we've all seen a company commit intellectual suicide by clinging to a process that doesn't fit the market anymore.
But we've always done it this way.
That's the sound of it right there. The rule book says we do X even when the customer is screaming for Y. They're looking at the map, not the territory.
Or even in relationships. You have a map of who your partner is. He always does this, or she never listens. A fixed formulation of them.
And if you cling to that, you stop seeing the actual person standing there. You miss how they're changing and growing. You can kill the relationship because you're interacting with your idea of them, not the reality of them.
So the living faith approach there would just be staying curious.
It would be holding your assumptions lightly. Using your past knowledge as a guide, sure, but remaining open to the encounter of the present moment. Admitting you don't know everything there is to know about this person or this problem.
It all goes back to the signpost. Use it, but don't hug it.
Don't live on the signpost. Use it to get where you're going, and then for heaven's sakes, look around.
Well, it's definitely given me something to chew on about my own certainties. It's easy to point at other people's dogmas, but much harder to spot your own.
We all have them. We all have those little areas where we feel safer knowing the truth than we do exploring the mystery.
So, as we wrap this deep dive up, what's the final thought we should leave everyone with?
I'd go back to that idea of partial knowledge. The source claims our knowledge is never complete. So if you accept that as true, even just for a moment, the question to ask yourself is this: what fixed formulation, what rule are you holding on to so tightly that it might be blocking you from a new vision of the world?
Is there a belief you're defending so fiercely that it's actually stopping you from seeing what's right in front of you?
That's the question.
The difference between the map and the territory. Well, thanks for walking us through it.
Always a pleasure.
We'll catch you in the next deep dive. Stay curious.